My mother was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. And back then, no one was talking about mental health. So I didn't know what to do. I became this kind of shell of myself and became very shy, didn't talk a lot to people. My mom was in the house, out of the house, a Jane Doe at a hospital, missing person several times. Her delusions were pretty bad back then. I talk about it, obviously, all the details in the book. With my mom's illness, it sent me as a teenager through my own situational depression, drug misuse, all the bad things. I was thinking I was going to become my mother.
Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of the Terri Cole Show. I just had the most inspiring conversation with my pal, Karena Dawn. So for more than a decade, Karena has empowered millions of women around the world to live their healthiest and happiest lives. You might know her because she created the Tone It Up sensation like 15 years ago. So she has a lifelong passion for fitness and spiritual empowerment. She really has been a leader in the wellness community. I've been on her show. That's how I actually met her. She's been featured in Forbes for creating a fitness empire legitimately. She's done a zillion things. She is a mindful meditation coach for Chopra Global, and she's a regularly featured speaker and instructor for TED Women and other national platforms. So we also talked about the fact that her book, which is a memoir called The Big Silence, and it's all about her mom having a mental illness in the 80s when nobody was talking about it and how she managed it. Her mother was diagnosed with schizophrenia. So we talk all about that, and she's just releasing the audio book with a whole bunch of bonuses. So anyway, we talk a lot about mental wellness, mental health. How do we stay on this path? How did she manage being a young kid and having a mom who was diagnosed with schizophrenia when nobody was talking about that at the point, and how she healed herself? So I hope that you enjoy this interview with Karena Dawn as much as I enjoyed interviewing her. I'm so excited to have a frequent flyer to the Terri Cole Show back again. Karena Dawn, my pal, welcome back.
Hi, thanks for having me. Always fun to chat with you. Also over on my podcast too.
Indeed, we're in all the pods together. So let's discuss. Last time you were on the show, it was when your book, your memoir, had first come out. And now, most recently, you have the audio version, a whole bunch of other stuff. So I want to talk a little bit about where you and I are, we intersect our hearts as friends, but also as mental health advocates in a real way. That, like, you are the living embodiment. You have this whole other massive career that you've had, obviously, influencing people with health and wellness. And I did this all, at the top, I was telling everyone about what you did, but you've taken this platform and really turning it into the big silence and opening such a deep and meaningful and fruitful dialogue around mental wellness and suicide and mental illness and all the things that I really just feel like you're saving lives, like, so much, Karena. I really do.
Thank you.
So talk about your inspiration a little.
Well, it's the big silence. It's all the things that we don't talk about, we're ashamed to talk about. There's a stigma, and it's really breaking that silence and making everyone feel very comfortable to have those hard conversations. And yeah, with Tone It Up, I was saving lives, improving lives, bringing joy and happiness and laughter and making fitness fun again. But there comes a point in my life, and then I saw that in other people's lives, like, if you're talking about eating right and moving your body for health, we need to also be talking about mental health, because it's all one. You can't have one without the other. And so it started with the big silence, the podcast and speaking, and our events and our Therapy for All program, where we provide therapy for those who can't afford it, or perhaps insurance doesn't cover it. And part of why I started and how I broke my silence was writing the book.
Yeah.
And I've had 2 Tone It Up books and New York Times bestsellers, but this was more of almost my own therapy to put it on paper and then release it out there. And hopefully my story can save one life.
Well, would you do me a favor for the people who haven't yet? Because now they'll have the option to actually have the audiobook, which is amazing. And I know you have added stuff to it as well. But for those who don't know, would you give us sort of the Clip Notes version of what inspired you to write the memoir, and really has planted the seeds of your mental wellness
Yeah.
inspiration.
So I grew up in with a mother. I was born in the 80s, teenager in the 90s where no one was talking about mental health. My mother was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. And back then, no one was talking about mental health, like I said. And so I didn't know what to do. I became this kind of shell of myself and became very shy, didn't talk
Mm,
a lot to people. My mom was in the house, out of the house, a Jane Doe at a hospital, missing
mm,
person several times. Her delusions were pretty bad back then. I talk about it, obviously, all the details in the book. And
mhm.
I was a scared child. I'm a suicide survivor as a teenager. Thank God. I'm here
Thank
for a
God.
reason. Everyone is here for a reason. I'm so happy I'm here and as strong as I am today. And yeah, so with my mom's illness, it sent me as a teenager through my own situational depression, drug misuse, all the bad things. I was thinking I was going to become my mother. You know,
Mm,
it's genetic typically. And so in my early 20s, though, I decided I am not my mother. And I knew like there was something in me that said, I am not my mother. I'm not going to end up like this, like generations before my
mhm,
grandfather and before that. And I started the healing process for myself through fitness. I changed
mhm,
Hollywood club nights and
mhm,
raves for waking up at sunrise and going surfing in California,
mhm,
to training for triathlons, to meditation, to yoga, therapy, reading every self-help book. And
mhm.
it takes a long time to heal, and we do heal for the rest of our lives, I believe.
Right.
But finally, 15, 16 years later, in the best place I've been in my life, mentally and with joy. So I wanted to be able to just share this message and story.
What I think is so beautiful about the memoir, about the sharing of the story, is how it's giving permission to other people who've had a similar experience to you to share, to shed the shame, because there's a stigma. Even though nobody was talking about it, what you were experiencing creates a stigma within yourself. You know something isn't right if your mother is going missing. You know something isn't right. And I feel like a lot of times as kids, we take that on. Have you heard from a lot of people who read the book who had similar experiences?
Yeah, and you said the word shame, and right before you said that, that word popped up in my head because
Really?
I had shame for what had happened, my mother's diagnosis. And so I hid the stigma. And so, but once I spoke and I said it, there was like this exhale. My shoulders went down. I felt
Mm,
lighter because I was sharing the story and not carrying the shame. Yes, to answer your question, many, many women from whether the Tone It Up community or someone else who's found me through my work in mental health, many people have reached out and said, oh my gosh, all this time I had no clue. Now I know, and I feel like I'm not alone. Or
right.
there's been people that message and say, I was going to end my life last night and I
Yeah.
heard you say something and I called that text line and I'm now seeing a psychiatrist. So it's like my work is done there. Like
Yeah.
just
Right.
it's incredible. Like the more that we talk and open up, then the more connected we become and we feel not alone.
But what you're also doing is you're actually normalizing the conversation. And so by having the conversation, and the thing is, you to lead, you're leading with vulnerability. You're not like, this is what you people should do. You're like, this is what you did by
Mhm.
sharing your life story, and also by standing firm in what it was and what you experienced and how it needs to be better and how it wasn't good for you because the system is so friggin' broken, and how there's wasn't help. And what you have created, like, I'm so impressed, and so, I don't know, it warms my heart that I know someone who's doing such good work in the world around mental wellness. But one of the biggest things, and I wonder, how are you doing this with helping people with therapy if they can't afford it? Can you talk a little bit about the inspiration for that? I mean, I understand, I definitely understand the need, But how are you doing that?
Right before this call, I was in a therapy session. So that's why I'm a
Mhm.
couple minutes late. Going overtime. And it's expensive. It literally is. And I know, from being a business owner and with having many employees and having them come to me, like I can't afford therapy or this therapist doesn't accept health insurance. And so the Therapy for All program at thebigsilence.com, you can apply for it. And we have a network
Mhm.
of therapists and we can match you with a therapist and we cover your expenses at least for the first 2 sessions.
Yeah.
So I think it's so important because, I do tune-ups. So I just had a little tune-up
Hmm.
right before
Yeah,
this.
I do too.
Yeah. And therapy is so important and it's life-changing. And I think everybody should have the opportunity to have it.
Yeah. I totally agree. It's interesting though, even having had I mean, I've had decades of therapy, of course. I think I started when I was 19 and I just turned 60. So yeah, I've had a lot of therapy in those many years. But as my life changes and as I go into different phases of life, there are different challenges where it's so helpful to have someone that you can just bounce something off of. And again, I think one of the biggest blocks for so many people, besides the stigma, because I think that's there too, but I do think it is accessibility for sure. That
Yeah.
and you guys making it accessible is amazing. And actually, I know a lot of people have negative shit to say about the online therapy stuff, but I'm going to say for people who live in a place where there's no good therapists or there's nothing available to them, it's like a desert of therapy. All of the online stuff you can find. I mean, I actually vetted with my team the BetterHelp, like secretly. So when they had approached me years ago, and I know there's some shit with them too. Like no matter what it is you're doing, there's gonna be someone's gonna have something to say about it. But for me, because I don't associate myself with stuff like this often or ever for that matter, because I don't do ads on my whatever. I'm sure I should be making more money somehow, but I just feel like as a therapist, you're like, oh, you got to be so careful. But anyway, I about 15 people I had vet BetterHelp and people in my family, and I asked them questions. How was it if you wanted to switch therapists? Was it easy? Was it hard? I think there was one not great experience with one therapist ghosting. But I mean, listen, with 15 people, you're going to have something. And certainly at a $200 a month or $180 a month for 4 sessions, that's more affordable than a lot of stuff that's out there.
Oh, yeah. That's really good. I haven't looked into BetterHelp, but
Yeah, it's actually I actually haven't used it myself, but that's why I wanted to put so many other people through it to be like I put anyone through it if they were willing to tell me what their experience was. Because again, I mean I think we waited 8 months from when they approached us and they let me give people free links. So these were people all having free therapy
oh,
until I could vet them.
I'm gonna look into BetterHelp a little more because
I'm
that
just
would.
saying. Because
Um,
that could be also a way to support other people. Maybe you can do a deal with them. Anywho, moving on to. So right now, what are you lit up about in your life? Like what is exciting you? What is making you happy?
you know, like I said earlier, I'm in like this place of joy in my life. Not saying things aren't hard and
Mhm.
you know, there's always something going on. What am I lit up about? Is obviously I have my audiobook coming out. I've been doing a lot more speaking engagements and connecting with people.
Yeah,
I'm really lit up about that. I was just at the NAMI conference doing
yeah.
and I get lit up about being in a room with people that then share their story, that then cry, then meet other people, and they like this connection. I literally like that lights me up, and being of service to
Mhm.
the community.
It's amazing though to make connections with other people who are lit up about mental health, right? Part of it is there's so much brainstorming that goes along as well, but you also, on the flip side of so the mental health work is a big part of your work, but you also are a massive entrepreneur,
Mhm.
and for me are always asking me how did I create what I created, and I want to know for you because you have a certain knack for creating a community. Like even before you were doing big silent stuff when it was Tone It Up, you really created a communal thing. So for you, let's talk a little bit about how you did that and how do you create that kind of community?
Wow. So can you believe I co-founded Tone It Up 15 years ago?
Wow.
To have a fitness and wellness nutrition company for that long is amazing. And we were the first fitness people on YouTube. We were around before Instagram.
Stop.
Imagine. No, can you believe that? It's so weird when I tell like younger
Yeah.
people now on the scene in the fitness industry. And we came together again, it was with purpose. Everything that I personally do is for purpose. And so
Hmm.
is fitness became my therapy when I was healing out of my darkness. And then
Hmm.
I got to this place because as a little kid, I would watch my mom before she was sick, and she would work out to Jane Fonda and Denise Austin VHS tapes. And I was like, I want to do that when I grow up.
Yeah.
And that was just a thought as a kid, but then it stuck with me. And when I, came out of my darkness and realized that fitness was what makes me happy and those endorphins,
Mhm.
I was like, I want to teach other women this. And so it was a natural thing. And then I met my co-founder at the gym, and we both were in our own fitness space already. And we both have our own story of why we work out. And it was never for the aesthetic necessarily. That's a
Yeah.
bonus. But for me, it was always because it just makes me feel good. I can go a day, maybe 2 days, but day three, if I'm not working out, I'm going to be a little grumpy, maybe a little
Yep.
sad, just not going to feel good. So the idea was to create this safe space for fitness in a time 15 years ago where fitness was a little bit intimidating. So
Mm.
it's kind of like we wanted women to feel welcome. We were, friends on the beach filming with our tripod and having fun. And then we always talked positively too. We never talked down on a woman's body parts or anything, like
Mhm.
beautiful, whatever season you're in. And it really started to build a natural community because we were being welcoming, we were being kind. I think that kindness attracts people. People want more kindness and more
Yep.
love. And so the community just naturally started to evolve and build to millions
Hmm.
across the world. And it naturally, I mean, we wanted to set out to build this community and be a safe
Yeah.
space, but it like really built, you know? And I think that the key thing was always being authentic to our voice, saying no to certain offers that we had come our way for whether sponsorship or a
Hmm.
protein that we didn't necessarily believe in the ingredients, we would say
Yeah.
no. And we said no to a lot of things more than we said yes. And we stood by our morals and our foundation of what we
Yeah.
thought wellness should be. And we just stuck to it.
It's amazing though how when you do that, that's hard to do. Like in hindsight, right? Hindsight is always 2020, where we're like, we just stuck to it and it worked out. But in reality, it can be tempting to be like, oh, this could be an infusion of cash or this could be whatever. And yet I feel exactly the same way where there's just some stuff where you just go, that's just not my vibe. That won't resonate with the right people. Like if I do that, I won't be attracting the right people, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. It's kind
Yeah.
of, the way that we did it is we built community first, and then we listened to what the community wanted.
Yep.
Whether it's, well, what is your nutrition? What do you eat? What protein do you have? Okay, well, we'll make the protein that is our protein that we believe in. We want this or this to be okay. We're listening to the community and we build it. Whereas a lot of companies or brands or they create the product and then they expect to build a community around a piece of gum or something,
Right. Right.
and
Right.
where we did it in a way where it was really important for us to have connection and build
Hmm.
that first and then listen to what they wanted.
Yep. It's amazing though how when you stick to that, it resonates with the right people who are sort of meant to be in
Mhm.
that community. So where does for you, I know we're both meditators, but where does mindfulness meditation and spirituality, where does that come into your life and your mental health?
It's a daily must, not saying there's days that I miss it. I started having it be part of my daily routine, morning routine about 8 or 9 years ago
Hmm.
when it was still a bit woo or consider it
Hmm.
still is a little, some people are like, oh, I can't do that, but call it prayer, call it
Hmm.
silence, call it what you want.
Right.
So it really helps me with presence. As you know,
Mm.
we all have busy lives, work, relationships, different roles. And the only thing that can really bring me back to myself, help with any anxiety, is
Mhm.
meditation. And the key thing is, even me, I could do, 20 minutes or I could do 2 minutes.
Mhm.
And I just feel incredible. And I encourage anyone to just try it, even for 2 minutes. I have meditations in the Toner Up app, but I also use the Calm app. I
Mhm.
I love sleep meditations. I
Mm.
Matthew McConaughey has a great sleep story.
I love it. That is intentionally putting you to sleep.
Yeah, it's like I'd say adult bedtime story, but not like that. Not
Not that kind of adult story. I know
not
what you mean.
that adult, but yeah, I fall asleep within like 2 minutes of hearing Matthew McConaughey say, "Hello there."
And then you're sleeping. Yeah,
But
it's there's something so powerful about having a mindfulness practice.
Mhm.
And it's something that for a lot of people struggle with. And so I totally agree with you. It's not about, we don't have to sit for an hour. Nobody needs to move to India. I mean, if you want to, fine, but it's not necessary. It doesn't have to be on a mountaintop. Your legs don't need to be crossed. It's really finding what works for you.
Mhm.
If I'm really struggling, I find that doing guided meditations
Mhm.
is easier, even though I've had a dedicated practice for decades, literally, but it's the same. It's the quality of my internal experience will dictate how the quality of my meditation. And I always say, Vic and I meditate every day, a lot of times together, sometimes separate, but I always will be like, how is your meditation? Some days he'll be like, noisy. I'm like, yeah, me too. Or he'll ask me and I'll say, more like thinking, less like meditating. He'll laugh. But your ass on the pillow for any amount of time with the intention to go in.
Mhm.
And, David G, my teacher, I became a meditation teacher from him, but I've known him for decades. He's got the most unbelievable voice, like amazing. But he talks about meditating should be sort of as effortless as just mist coming off a lake. And I
Mhm.
always think about like, right, I don't have to try so hard. It's okay to just chill. And I always ask questions ahead of time, like, who am I? What am I really grateful for? What do I really want? And what is my dharma? Right?
Yeah.
How can I help? How can I heal? How can I serve myself and others with my unique and special gifts and talents? Anyway, long and drawn out way of I say that a bunch of times and then blow it out sort of into the universe before I go into repeating a mantra. And what I find is that the days when I can really do it, when I'm really present, the
Mhm.
quality of the rest of my day
Mhm.
is just so much better. So
Oh,
it's similar, and I feel the same about exercise that you shared. That if I miss a day, if I miss 2 days, but if it goes into 3 days, I will absolutely notice that lack of endorphins for
mhm.
me. Right? It's like part of why we're doing it is
Yeah.
that it makes us feel good.
Yeah. And you get energy. Like
Yeah,
I'm telling you, meditate and move your body, and you have energy. You don't even need caffeine. Um,
seriously.
it's incredible. I have a question. So, any tips on encouraging or being a role model to get your partner to meditate?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, with Vic, the way that we actually ended up going to this weekend within together at the Chopra Center a million years ago because someone gifted it to us. Really, this is how we met Deepak and David Simon and David G. And this was, I don't know, 2001 maybe. And so Vic is very open. So he was open to doing it. And he's kind of an old hippie. So I think he had already done meditation, but just wanted me to think I discovered it because he felt bad. So he was like, when I heard that he had meditated in the 70s, I was like, hello? Why did you let me think that I introduced us to meditation? He was like, well, you were so excited. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make it any different. Anyway, I think the invitation has to be that it matters to you.
Mhm.
So that's it. It's like if Vic drops his practice, because I definitely notice a difference in him too, I'll say, hey babe, can you please join me getting back on the getting back on the horse. And even with Bobby, just saying, this matters to me.
Yeah. Um, Bobby and I have gone to a week-long meditation retreat in California and Monterey. And at first he was like, I don't want to do this. I'm like, come on, it's important. You love it. By day one, he's like, this is too hard. And sometimes there was like hours of silence.
Yeah.
And by day two, it got a little easier. By day five, he was buying tickets for the next one because he
No.
loved it. He was like, this is incredible. But then it's like how to stick to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. But what's amazing though, so you have this amazing base now to go from. And the way that I do it with Vic, and I'm, somebody might think this is manipulative. I don't mean it that way. But the truth is, he's always happy to be a part of my solution. And if
Mhm.
I'm especially struggling, which, it's so easy to struggle being committed to it. Sometimes it's a breeze. And then I'll always hit up against something when I'm really stressed about writing a book or whatever it is I'm doing. And if I say to him, can you please commit with me to doing 21 days in the morning? We can start with, and we would just do it. We would just start with 10 minutes on the clock. 10
Mhm.
minutes. That's it. Light a candle. We do it sitting up in bed. But again, it's inviting him to help me without sort of feeling like I'm judging him. You know what I mean? So maybe if it would help you, you can say, would you be open to this? Let's just try it. 21 days. Let's just see. Let's do it as an experiment. Let's just see how we feel before. Let's see how we feel after. I don't know. There's always that kind of exciting ways to make it interesting, you know?
Yeah. And I would say too, like when we do meditate together or go to these retreats where he's totally in, and even we've had like a night of silence where we don't talk, but we
Mm-hmm.
keep their eyes and and like that was my favorite date night. But
Mm-hmm.
we become closer. I
Absolutely.
think when partners can meditate together or even be in silence together, it
Mm-hmm.
brings you closer.
I have to say, I totally agree. And the I find it's such a turn on for me with Vic, even 27 years later, his curiosity, his willingness to say yes to whatever adventure it is that I want, meditation being one of them. It makes me feel very safe with him as a person, makes me feel very considered because he gives a shit how I feel and what I think and what I want. But it's also really sexy because it takes courage
Mhm.
to be like, you guys would love. David G does these things in down by San Diego, but it's not San Diego. It is, he calls it the sweet spot of the universe. Where is it? Anyway, down there, Southern Cal. And we go to this place called the Nest. And it can be 4 days, 5 days, but you're getting up at 5 a.m., meditating on the beach. So this house is literally on the beach. And, even the stuff that he's teaching, a lot of it we already maybe know, but again, it's having this shared experience, meditating twice a day with just you're literally sitting on the beach with the waves like crashing in front of you. It's just there's something so powerful about getting us out of completely tech free, really getting away. And I feel like that is so helpful for longevity. How long have you guys been together?
Let's see, in this summer, we will be 8 years married, 12. This is weird. My oldest dog is 13, and my dog was here when we started dating. So we've been together 12 years.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, long-term stuff, it really does require there's got to be some intersection of
Yeah.
interest, I think, to keep it interesting, or a love of travel. Like, because you guys I know travel a lot. Um,
Do. Yeah. And I also do solo traveling. I love a good solo travel, which then, and Bobby used to never, but then I just went on a solo trip and then he booked himself. He's like, you just inspired me. And which is good because him being able to be with himself.
yeah,
And he's like, I was just inspired. I'm going to go do a solo trip. I'm going to travel. I'm going to do this. I'm like, you go. Like, yeah.
yes, love it. All right, so tell us where we can get, because now the audio is already out. So tell us where they can get the audiobook and tell us a little bit about, yeah, I know that you added some special bonuses. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so I did the audiobook because I got a ton of requests for it. I'm like, you know what? And
Hmm.
it took me some time because when you do an audiobook, you're doing one right now, I believe, right?
Yeah, I just finished. Yep.
And you're using your own voice, and mine's a
Hmm.
memoir. So I had a lot of fun doing it because I could change my voice for different characters or,
Yeah.
but I also had to relive it again. So there was the
Oh.
emotion behind that. So it took me a little time to get in the studio to actually do it, but I wanted to offer something different. So there's 8 sections in between the
Hmm.
chapters. And at the end of each section, there's bonus footage. I call it therapy sessions, where my friend
Hmm.
Dr. B, who's a therapist, came in and asked me questions where we really deep dive into maybe my
Hmm.
childhood, how I was feeling then. We take it a step further and dissect it. So
Hmm.
a lot of vulnerability in
Mm.
there. So that's amazing. And then my sister, so each chapter has either poetry that I wrote as a child, or my
Mm.
sister's a poet, Rachel, or the chapter opener is my dad's a therapist, but he also writes music and plays guitar. So there's poems at the beginning of each chapter, and I had
Mm.
Rachel reading her poetry. She has a beautiful poetry voice. So it's
Oh.
and yeah, I'm excited. I think the toughest part was like reliving and having to read the epilogue. But
Oh, it's a lot. So you guys, the book is The Big Silence, A Daughter's Memoir of Mental Illness and Healing by Karena Dawn, who is right here. And you can get that audiobook on Audible and everywhere that
yeah,
audiobooks are sold. And you don't want to miss it, especially if you liked this conversation and what Karena had to say. I really do think you will be inspired as hell by the book. It left me feeling so incredibly hopeful. So thank you for spending time with us today, Karena. I love you. I can't wait to see you when I'm in Austin.